Thank you, Amy. And it's really nice to be here. This is very much my backyard. We do live in Chevy Chase, Bethesda, so it is a short drive. As I said, I was able to have dinner with my family before coming here, and it's just nice to come to this next part of what is an extension of my family, because I've been part of this university and this discussion for quite a few years. So it's a fun moment to share with you the book, and for us, the book is a way to bring our story out to a wider audience, maybe than just the people who are drinking tea. So I'm going to do a very short setup, because I know that Jan has a lot of questions, and that to me is always the richest part of the conversation. But I just want to help orient you to sort of how I'm thinking about this business and this moment in our society. And I'll start, when we talk about our society, I'll just start with a quick, let's just check sort of where we are. So this has been a really weird season to be in Washington, D.C., right? We had the furlough, we had the government shutdown, everything was dysfunctional. Not like anything, we had just strange incidents around the Capitol. And you think, is anything positive going on here? And there was a positive moment just when the furlough started. President Obama was signing the legislation to make sure, it was an executive order, it wasn't legislation, executive order to make sure the military got paid during the whole shutdown. And so this was a picture that was captured of him signing the bill. And I know the lighting's a little bad here, but you can see over on this corner of the Resolute desk, there was a bottle of Honest Tea. And somebody said, well, we should have just photoshopped in so it was turned the right way. But I said that would have been honest to do that. My wife pointed out that he wasn't using a coaster. There you go. Thank you. Much better. Much better. You can see the yeah. So actually, it is worth noting, because presidents are very deliberate. Their staffs are very deliberate about not having them affiliated with brands. So this actually, I think, was not a total accident. But it is a kind of interesting just point of reference. So at the end of my talk, I'm going to share with you a video, a sourcing trip to India, and I'll set that up. But before we do that, I want to just give you a little orientation about how I think about this business. We call it a mission-driven business. And if you had asked me 16 years ago, or if you had told me 16 years ago that I'd be living in Bethesda, Maryland, I'd be running an organization that helps to eliminate billions of calories from the American diet, and helps to promote the spread of organic agriculture, and helps spread fair trade labor standards in the developing world, I'd say, oh, that sounds like a really great NGO or a really great nonprofit. What's the name of that entity? I would never have guessed it was a beverage company, let alone one that is now owned by the Coca-Cola company, let alone one that delivered a 26 times return to its founding investors. But that's really been the story of Honest Tea. And it's funny, we talk about it, we ran the business like a nonprofit. We ran it like that with a mindset for our mission, and unfortunately we also ran it like that as a business too. We had no profits for the first 10 years, so it was sometimes too literal, in the sense that we had to always go back to investors to raise money, because we were always losing money. And yet, because we created something meaningful and different, and different from what else was out there, the company like Coca-Cola found value in it and decided they wanted to help spread it. So the story is, its origins do happen in New Haven. This is a picture from the book, and as you heard, it is a comic book. And the idea started in the classroom, and Barry, who was pictured here, my co-founder, was my professor. And we talked about the fact that the beverage industry was filled with drinks. And Barry said, well, how could there be anything missing? God, literally, we all walk down a grocery aisle, there are hundreds of products. They almost all have the same ingredients. They almost all have the same taste profile, the differences in colors and packaging, but how could anything be missing? And I said, well, they're all, about 100 calories per serving. There's nothing with 1 or 2 teaspoons. And if I make a tea at home, I don't put in 5 teaspoons per cup. Why doesn't anybody do that? And so Barry agreed, and at the time I was not able to launch the company, but we had an interesting idea and we sort of held on to it. And then a few years later, after graduating, I was in New York City. I'd gone for a run in Central Park, and I was thirsty. And I saw there was still nothing out there. And that's when I got back in touch with Barry. I said, I think I'm ready to do something about this. And Barry said, yes, not only would I like to support you doing it, but he had just come back from India. He had just been studying the tea industry, and he had come up with the name Honest Tea, which for me kind of felt like the clouds parted, like, okay, it all makes sense. This is the way to connect a mission to a brand. And it's funny, when we registered the name, we registered for the trademark, we registered it as Honest Tea, the 2 words, but we also registered H-O-N-E-S-T-E-A. And within a few weeks of that application, we heard back from Nesttea's trademark lawyer, who said, no, you're trying to market a product called Ho Nestea. And we're not comfortable with that. I said, well, when you put it that way, I don't think we're comfortable marketing a product called Ho Nestea. So we withdrew the application for Ho Nestea, and we kept the one for Honesty. And so we were in business. And Barry came down to Bethesda. We brewed 5 thermoses of tea in my kitchen. We got an empty Snapple bottle that we pasted a label on. We went to Whole Foods, to the regional office. We had an appointment, and said, we want to sell this in your store. And to our great delight/horror, the buyer said, I'll take 15,000 bottles. And we never made anything more than we had done in the kitchen. So we scrambled and we figured out how to get in business. And I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about how the business worked. But I want to just share with you a little bit about what is it meant for us to grow and build the business. Well, first of all, we got to a point where we were doing well in natural foods, but we weren't getting beyond that. And so when Coca-Cola invested in 2008, we were in about 15,000 stores. Since Coca-Cola has been our partner, we are now in over 100,000 stores. And we're reaching, we talk about our commitment to democratizing organics. Now we're reaching people who never had access to organic, fair trade, low sugar products. So we love the natural food stores, we always will, because they're the ones who got us our start. But if we're gonna be impactful, we have to go beyond that. So for us, the scale of distribution has been really important, and that's certainly a huge benefit of Coca-Cola. Another important aspect is on the sourcing. So we are, as you'll see in the video, we buy only organic and fair trade certified tea leaves. When Coke invested, we were buying about 800,000 pounds of organic ingredients. This year we'll buy over 5 million pounds of organic ingredients. So now we really start to change the way these communities think about their sourcing. And if they make the decision that, should we try to make this an organic garden? Should we try to make this a fair trade certified garden? And when they can see this kind of demand, not just from some sort of wacky guy out of Bethesda who started the company out of his house, but from the world's largest beverage company, it's a different conversation. One of the questions that I know will come up is, well, wait a minute, why, Coca-Cola doesn't necessarily share all the same values as an organic fair trade tea company. How could you partner with them? And we'll have more of a discussion about it, I'm sure, but one of the reasons we call the book Mission in a Bottle is because for us, the mission is in the bottle. Every product we sell has the intrinsic benefits of organic, lower sugar, and fair trade. And so from our perspective, if we believe that, I believe it, we can have a discussion whether or not that's a valid assumption, but if that's the case, in our view, our responsibility to make it as big as we can. We have to grow it to scale because people deserve to have access to those products. Communities who supply deserve to have clean air, clean water, and healthy ecosystems. And that's what we think we're promoting when we do that. So I want to share with you, before we get to the video, just 2 big picture thoughts. As you'll notice on our bottles, we have quotes under the caps. And by the way, on our plastic bottles, we still have the quotes. They're on the inside of the label. We call it, it's a little bit like, when I was growing up, Cracker Jack used to have real toys inside. Now they just have little lame things. But our quotes are like the toy surprise inside. It's like a little gift that helps you sort of think about something. So here's 2 of my favorites. The first says, if we don't change the direction we are headed, we will end up where we are going. Well, it's obvious, right? Of course that's true. But where are we going? If you look at what's happening in American society, it's clear to me we are headed in the wrong direction. And to me, one of the biggest indicators is that recently the United Nations ranked the average life expectancy of all the countries in the world. There's about, well, it depends on who you ask, there's somewhere between 191 and 206 countries. You can debate about Liechtenstein or Luxembourg. But anyway, about 200 countries. So where does the United States rank in terms of average life expectancy? Keep in mind, we're the wealthiest nation in the history of the world. We have more advanced knowledge of science and medicine than any civilization has ever had. But we're not number 1. We're not number 2. We're number 40. So what does that say about our diets, about our lifestyles, about our relationship to the natural world, about our relationship to each other? It's not just, we're not just off a little bit, 40. So how do you change that? I wish I could tell you that the government could do that. I'm confident they won't, and I probably actually don't really think they should try. I don't think that's their responsibility. I wish I could tell you that big business is going to lead us to a healthier future, but I don't think they're going to lead us either, because they, by definition, are invested in the direction we're in. Nonprofits play a very important role, but how do you move toward a healthier direction? I believe that it comes from entrepreneurs who can point to a healthier direction. They have to come up with ideas about how you change the way you live, how you change the way we eat, what we wear, how we travel, where we live, how we live. And most of those concepts aren't going to work. But when they do work, when the market basically rewards them and says this is something we can believe in and we can support, then the big companies will follow. And when the big companies follow is when powerful change can happen. So in our own way, we think Honest Tea is part of that direction, changing direction. And I will be the first to say that it is not easy work to do. I tell the story in the book about how in the first few weeks, just after we delivered product to Whole Foods, I was at a family picnic eating a slice of pizza, and I felt something crunchy in the pizza, and I said, well, wait, you're not supposed to have anything crunchy in pizza. It was my tooth that had cracked. And so I went to the dentist, she's actually just up the street, and I said, and she looked at it, she says, well, I can tell you're grinding your teeth at night. Are you under any stress? And I said, yeah, I guess you could say that, at this company. She said, well, you have two options. You can try deep breathing and sort of, turn the lights low before you go to bed, or I can just fit you for a night guard, and your teeth will still grind, but there'll be that padding there. I said, I think I need the night guard. And I still wear a night guard because it was hard work 15 years ago. It's still hard work. It's still challenging. We're to build a mission-driven business in a profit-driven world. But it's work that is important. In my view, it needs to be done. And before we go to the video, I'll just share with you, this is a quote. When you walk into Honest Tea's office in Bethesda, Maryland, you'll see this quote. Those who say it cannot be done should not interrupt the people doing it. And we're at an important point. It's a fragile moment I believe, in our society and our economy, where we can choose to stay in the direction we're headed, and it's ultimately not going to take us to a sustainable direction. Or we can think about how do we change it. And it is it's challenging work to do, but it's important work, and you all here are in a place where you can get the training, the skills, and hopefully the inspiration to follow this course. So now we're going to turn to a video, which is a video from a trip I took to India about 18 months ago. And you'll see two very different connections to communities. These are both ingredient suppliers. One is a fair trade tea garden. One of the leading fair trade tea gardens, really one of the first fair trade tea gardens, it's in southern India, called the Korakunda Garden. And you'll see that our fair trade funds support here a world-class school. Actually, I have to say that when I visited this school, I visited some of the worst schools in DC, and I was really ashamed to feel like not that children in rural India shouldn't have access to great education, but to feel like here we are in the United States, and this rural school in India has better science facilities than we have here in the District of Columbia. And then the second community is a supplier of Tulsi. Has anyone heard of Tulsi? So it is an herbal basil leaf, and we buy it. I don't know if we have some samples back here. No, I don't think so. But it is it's an amazing ingredient, and we buy. The community that supplies this is in a much more basic economic need state. They are not, unfortunately, not able to worry about the school. They're worried about, can they have access to power? They only have access to power 3 hours a day. And so you'll see how we partner with this community is very different than what we choose to support. And it just so happens that when I was there, the power came on, and you'll see how that changes the visit. So, video. At Honest Tea, we always like to stay connected to our ingredients and the communities that produce them. So earlier this year, I traveled to Tamil Nadu in India to visit the Korakunda Tea Garden, 6,400 feet above sea level. Here's the 2 leaves, 1, 2 on the button. Our basket is much more full than mine. Once the tea leaves have been picked, they're weighed and then shipped off to the processing center. 2/3 of the land is still rainforest, which helps explain why there's so much biodiversity. The landscapes in Korakunda are amazing, but the most cherished asset in the community is the school that's supported by fair trade funds. In fact, the school is so impressive that families from surrounding communities try to get their children into the school, even if the parents don't work in the tea garden. We were warmly welcomed and even treated to a local version of the Hokey Pokey. Just for fun, I brought along stomp rockets, a toy my sons and I have always enjoyed, and we even managed to get one stuck on the roof. We also visited Bengaluru to learn more about the Tulsi plant. The first farm we visited was 4 acres owned by a farmer and his wife. The power only comes on for 3 hours a day in Bengaluru, and it just so happened that when we were there, the power came on. So when the water pump started, it was time to plant the tulsi seedlings. It took a few tries to learn how to plant the seedlings the right way. Cows roam freely in India, so you have to watch your step. Tulsi is also known as holy basil, and the herb is used in Hindu ceremonies, as seen here with this tulsi garland. During the visit, our supplier and I cut the ribbon on a new tulsi drying facility. The farmers can sell freshly picked tulsi for about 14 cents a kilo. Not that much. When they sell it as garlands, they can sell it for 36 cents a kilo. But when they can sell tulsi as a dried ingredient, they can sell it for $3.70 a kilo. The new drying shed allows the community to capture more than 20 times the value of freshly picked tulsi. I also met with several dozen local farmers and explained why organics is important to American consumers and a great market for them. The opportunity to meet these farmers and learn more about the spiritual role tulsi plays in their lives made me even more excited to share this wondrous plant with our consumers.
That's a lot of storytelling there in a short amount of time. So let me start asking you, since this is really a DC Startup Forum, we tell our students minimum viable product, okay, is a good way to start. What was so special about the tea you brewed at home that you could walk into Whole Foods in a repurposed Snapple bottle and a mock-up label and get an order?
It was meaningfully different. We showed him what was on the shelf. We did the inventory of all the offerings he had, and they were all around 100 calories per serving. And so, you had 100 calories, you had 0 calories, and we didn't just come in and say, here's a 90-calorie tea or an 80-calorie tea. We said, here's a 17-calorie tea. So we were offering him something with 1/6 the sweetener of what he had, and it was different enough. It was worth trying. He didn't obviously know if it was going to work. We didn't know if it was going to work, but it was meaningfully different that he understood why it was worth trying.
So that was the job to be done in the marketplace?
Yeah, they'll let the marketplace show, if it's
more calories than organic?
Yeah, because in the beginning we weren't all organic. We just had some organic ingredients. And I think that was a way to communicate we had a commitment to organic, but we weren't able to offer him a completely organic product.
And then how did you scale up from the kitchen operation to a company?
Not very easily and not very pretty in terms of the way we did it. So it literally, I started with my co-founder Barry saying, all right, well, look, he's dipping a tea bag in a teacup. We just take this and multiply times 10,000 and that should work. I get why you say that, but there was a lot to do. So we did literally try these large bags. We got mesh bags that were like filter bags. But the kind you use to clean a pool, but they had to use for that. And so we dipped those in, we filled them with tea leaves and we dipped them in water. And as you would guess, when you put a lot of tea leaves in a bag, not all the leaves, got immersed or infused. Some of the bags broke, and so you had tea leaves in the tank, which went into the pipes, which clogged the pipes, which led to explosions, and sort of an inch and a half of tea leaves in the bag. It was ugly, but we did manage to make our delivery date at Whole Foods.
What time period are you talking about?
So we presented in March, and they basically said we're gonna place an order for 15,000 bottles, and we got the product to them by the end of May. So we basically, just two and a half months from that sort of commitment to raising the money, writing the business plan, designing the labels, printing the labels, making the product. And in the beginning, it was especially ugly because we insisted on front and back label. So we had to literally pack the product with no labels on them, because the bottling plant couldn't do front and back labels. So we packed the product without labels, shipped it to a shampoo bottle labeling plant in New Jersey, where we opened up the cases, ran those through the shampoo labeler, and then repacked them with a hairdryer, and it was a disaster.
Oh my God, that's an amazing story.
Yeah, it was. In fact, but we sold the product to Whole Foods for about 65 cents a bottle. We realized it cost us about 70 cents a bottle to make. So we were not going to make it up in volume.
All right, so you're an entrepreneur. Are you Are you family and friends kind
Yeah.
of funding, or is it
Only,
is
yeah.
VC
In the
funding?
beginning, the only people who would put money in were people who knew us and who kind of, couldn't say no. So it was, first of all, me and
Right.
Barry, and then our parents, and then my sister, and then Barry's college roommates and some friends, and we raised $500,000 that way. And that was enough to get us up and running. And then once we got up and running, we managed to raise money for people who we didn't know.
Wow, interesting. Okay, so you've got this product. I mean, was Starbucks ever your model, or not really? Or, I mean, what?
No, some of the models, like I really studied Nantucket nectars. I thought that was an interesting model. Stonyfield Farm Yogurt, where Gary Hirschberg took a natural, healthy product and sort of scaled it to mainstream penetration.
Mm-hmm. So I know you're very proud that Honest Tea is fair trade certified, but tell us, unpack that for
Yeah.
us. What does that mean?
Well, the first thing it means is the working conditions have been inspected by a third party. So no child labor, no prison labor, all of the wages meet International Labor Organization standards, and not just the working conditions also meet those standards. And then on top of that, a portion of the sales goes back to the community for them to reinvest. So the school that you saw is supported by fair trade funds. Those drying huts for the Tulsi are also supported by fair trade funds. Technically, that's not fair trade; it's sort of pre-fair trade, but a portion of the sales goes back to them. And as you heard in the video, that what you can do with a hut, like, it's such a basic structure, right? But to go from 14 cents a kilo to $3.70 a kilo is transformational. That tells a community, are we going to be a commodity really at the bottom of the pyramid, or can we? If you can gain, now there's some shrinkage when the product dries, but nonetheless, if you can make 20 times what you're getting as a commodity, then all of a sudden you can make a livelihood out of it.
Well, now, how do you scout these communities? Where do you find them? How do you find them?
We first start with the ingredients, so we want to have great ingredients, and then when we find, like Tulsi, when we found a really exciting ingredient like that, then we go to the different suppliers we work with and say, we're going to be interested in Tulsi. How do we connect to a community? And then we've been very fortunate to have suppliers who, since they've worked with the Fair Trade Gardens, they know this network, and this was a cooperative that we connected to. And a nice little postscript to that video, when I visited, their capacity was 10,000 kilos. After my visit, I just saw the supplier again in September. They're now producing 100,000 kilos. And it's part of the incremental income.
Mm-hmm.
It's part of the sales pitch, which I gave to say, we want this ingredient. And then the other nice postscript is just at the beginning of this month, we announced Honest Tea just signed a deal with Smashburger, which is a national 250 restaurant chain, that will be selling Honest Tea fresh brewed, and one of the varieties they'll be selling is our lemon herbal tea, which is the Tulsi.
So do you have people pitching you mystery ingredients
Yes,
all the time?
absolutely. But it's very interesting visitors and packages that are sent to our office. With all kinds of herbs in them, and
Do you have an herb analyst on
well,
staff?
we always try to brew it up. We'll see what we get. Well, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And what's interesting, sometimes someone will be so passionate about an ingredient, and it just doesn't taste good. And so how do you can't, especially when you're using very little sweetener, it has to play a role. You can't, and I learned that personally. We had a product that we brought out into the market called Harlem Honeybush. It's a honeybush ingredient, and it was just pure unsweetened honeybush tea. And I was so into the community that was providing. It was a cooperative based. Each farmer owned his own hectare, so like perfect definition of fair trade. But the product didn't taste good unsweetened. They had developed their infrastructure, so we got it moldy, which didn't help the taste either. And the product failed. And so just because I care about the mission or the impact, that is not enough. It's got to be meaningful to the consumer.
So you wouldn't use something like stevia or some of the natural?
We use stevia in some of our ingredients, but this was early on when this
Way
failed.
before,
Yeah.
way before. So in 2008, Coke had already invested in your company. They took you over fully as an entrepreneur.
In 2011.
In
Yeah.
2011. And as an entrepreneur, I mean, how does that feel? I mean, did you need to? Did you have to repay your investors? Did you want to? I mean,
Yeah.
what the tensions around that decision?
So by 2008, we were getting approached by all these different large multinationals, and we realized that we were, first of all, it was our 10-year anniversary as a company. So we felt like when we took our investors' money, even though they were in some cases our parents, we had an obligation to give them their money back, ideally with a return. And so we were mindful of that, but that wasn't going to make the decision. What really drove the decision was we saw some great opportunities to grow the brand, but we were running into limits. Safeway came to us and said, "We like your product. We see how it's growing in natural foods. We want it in all our stores." And we said, "That's great." And then Safeway said, "Well, how are you going to get it there?" We said, "Well, we can get you the Mid-Atlantic. We've got distribution. We got distribution in California." And Safeway said, "Good, but we've got stores in Chicago. We've got stores in Texas, and we need it in all our stores. So when you figure that out, let us know, and we'll be happy to take your product." So we were going to lose that opportunity if we couldn't deliver the distribution. And then we realized not just Safeway, but restaurant chains, other stores required us to have that coverage. And we have always been driven by the impact. And if we're not going to reach our impact, then that's a problem. So for us, partnering with a company made sense. Coca-Cola fit a lot of what we were looking for, mostly because they were open to not just taking over the brand right away. They wanted to invest. They bought 40% in 2008, so they were a minority investor. And we kept running the business out of Bethesda with the same team. And then in 2011, when they chose to buy the company, we both agreed that it was working. And so rather than me pick up and move to Atlanta or them take the brand over, we said, let's just keep the structure, keep the team in place, keep the office in Bethesda, and keep going. So when you ask how it feels feels much like it did.
So it still feels like your company.
Absolutely, yeah.
Like.
And anyone in the company would say this. I believe they'd say the same thing.
Interesting, very interesting. Well, I think that as we look at entrepreneurship, you first started on organic drinks, and now you're moving to non-organic, I think, or what?
Well, not totally. So we this year, for the first time, we launched. It was the first time since 2004. We launched a non-organic product, which was weird, right? We basically from 2004, when we made everything organic, everything we sold was organic. And then we launched a line called Honest Fizz, a zero-calorie, naturally sweetened soda. And when we looked at the pricing of stevia and erythritol, which are the two sweeteners we use, they're natural. But organic stevia is twice as expensive as non-organic, and organic erythritol is 2.75 times more expensive than non-organic. And then we said, well, where does, within our mission, what's most important? Sort of a healthy drink that we can make accessible, or just to be organic? And we realized we can't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. So we said, let's make this healthy, make it natural, 0 calorie, with one organic variety, and then let's start, basically put our suppliers on notice that we have to get there. And when we did fair trade in 2003, we only had one variety that was fair trade. It took us 8 years to become all the way organic, so all the way fair trade. So for us, there's no question what direction we're headed, but there's also a recognition you can't be perfect overnight. And I think for us, it's in a way, although it was a difficult decision at the time, we debated a lot, I lost sleep over it, but now I'm very comfortable with it because this is real. It's not we can all try to be perfect, but there's no such thing as a perfect person. There's certainly no such thing as a perfect company. But it's a direction, and are you committed to the journey, and do you have a sense of where you want to go?
Now, you've talked a little bit about this gray area, the gray zone between being mission-driven, as you are, and targeting organic, the sustainability, life footprints in the environment, and then operating in the real world of business. How do those play out for you?
Every day. I mean, it's really this recognition. To me, that's what being honest is about, is being open to the fact that we live in a contradiction. So we're committed to sustainability. Sustain means, the definition is to nourish and to uphold. We operate in a consumer economy, and the definition of consume is to devour and destroy. Wow. So we're automatically in a contradiction. We all are. The way we live, whether you chose to drive here or walk here, whether you recycle everything or not, whether you turn the lights on, we're all in that contradiction. And I think, not that you should ever be totally comfortable in it, but just to sort of accept it and be open to discussing it, which we are.
So do you see other jobs to be done? Are there other aspirations?
For me personally?
Well,
or for
entrepreneurially?
Entrepreneurially, yes. There's amazing opportunities out there. So going back, to me, the hot space, the white space, are those areas where you have the chance to take society in a different direction, and big business is going to follow. Because they have to, and look at the Coca-Cola business model, right? I mean, soda sales have been declining since 1998, so there's no question they were going to be looking to invest in alternatives, right? And so we just were, I won't say we were lucky, but we were fortunate to have identified an alternative that was attractive. But think about all the other aspects of society where healthier / more honest things should be, and I can just to rattle off a few. I was on the board of an organic baby food company that's just exploded and actually just got bought this year by Dannon. I've just joined the board of an organic, not organic, but a vegetarian protein alternative called Beyond Meat. You think about the impact of meat on our environment, on our diets, and to be able to have an alternative that tastes good and works in the same way that meat does in terms of cooking and all that. Very powerful opportunity. We just invested in an alternative cleaning company that instead of using the harsh, toxic cleansers, can use really just basically salt and electricity to clean things.
Are these all of your Bethesda Green?
Not all, no. These are just different companies that I've been in. I've become an investor in, advisor in. I'm an investor in Sweet Green, the restaurant chain.
Right.
So there are a lot of big ideas out there that have the potential to become big ideas.
Well, since I mentioned Bethesda Green,
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Sure.
You said it's here.
Yeah.
It's an incubator.
Yeah. It's a fun story about building an entity and sort of seeing how it evolves on its own. So it started in 2007. We were Honesty was doing a national promotion with bicycles. We gave away 500 bikes because we wanted to support a more healthy commute and more healthy lifestyle, greener commute. And as we were placing the purchase order for the bikes, I said, it was the same time we were about to give out our company's bonus for the second quarter. And we had a good quarter, but bonuses were small. And I said, well, we could either write a check to everyone for about a few $100s, or we could buy everyone a bike. So we bought everyone in our company a bike. And that same day that I was placing the purchase orders, the bike supplier got mad because I kept sending a new order, but they weren't mad because I kept increasing the order. The same day, I went and spoke at a Montgomery County employers event, and I said, we're about to buy all these bikes for our employees. Any employer here who wants to buy in with us, we'll get you the same rate. You won't be buying, you have to buy at least 15 bikes, but you'll get the pricing as if you're buying 565 bikes. And I'll throw in a case of Honest Tea for every bike you buy. And so we got three big employers to join us, and that was sort of the core of the founding of Bethesda Green. And then I went to those same companies, and one of them was the largest real estate landlord in downtown Bethesda. And I said, you've got all these restaurants in Bethesda, all generating grease. And all this grease is going to be used for dog food. But if you were to make this into biodiesel, you're sitting on OPEC here. I mean, you've got like a lot of grease that's coming out. And so they switched suppliers and all of a sudden converted the grease to biodiesel. And then I was always sort of bothered by the fact that here we are, this company selling a product that is one use, so it needs to be recycled. There's no recycling bins in downtown Bethesda. So I got in touch with the Bethesda Urban Partnership, the folks who manage the downtown, and with a local county council member, I said, if we put in recycling bins, will you be able to recycle? He said, yeah, we have the trucks with the 2 bays, we just don't have the bins. So I got Coca-Cola to write a check for $35,000. We installed bins, and now when you go down to downtown Bethesda, you'll see there are recycling bins throughout. So then the other supplier I went to, or the other partner was Chevy Chase Bank. I said, we'd love to have your support. Can you write a check? And they said, well, I didn't know at the time they were being bought by Capital One. They said, we can't write a check. But we have office space above one of our branches. 3,500 square feet, could you use that? I said, yeah, that's better than a check. That's worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. Let us set up a green business incubator there. And so now we have 16 entrepreneurs in Bethesda who are launching their businesses with Bethesda Green as their headquarters.
And do they get funding? Do they get introduced
Well,
to funding?
so they pay some rent, but they got so many of the things I didn't have. They have office space. They have a real mailbox that isn't a PO box. No supplier wants to give you any credit if you have a PO box because they know or they think you won't pay. They have conference room space. They have copiers, and they have this whole community of other entrepreneurs who they can commiserate with or co-inspire, collaborate with. We bring in speakers every month to provide training, whether it's around legal issues, accounting issues. So they get there's a lot that they get for that
right, we're a school of communication as well as a school of entrepreneurship. And, and I'm very impressed with the power of narrative
Yeah.
around your company. You have stories to tell. The stories seem to propel the company in many ways. Now you have a book.
Yeah.
There's a graphic novel. Can you talk a little bit about the power of narrative?
Mm-hmm.
How you either plan for the narrative, grow the narrative, tell the narrative, what role it plays
Yeah.
in the scaling of
Well, I think, people always want to understand what's going on behind something. And there's always something going on behind something, and if you don't tell it, they may imagine it to be something else. So, we all have to be storytellers. And so our story it's an authentic story. It's not fabricated. I really did start out of my house. We did have the thermoses. We've got the brewmaster who lived in the basement and all the other things. And so to be able to one of the things that's so, corporations now are such big, they're such big organizations, it's very hard to feel personally connected to them. And so when you can feel like you actually know a brand, and I remember when I was with my brother, who's 10 years older than me, we traveled around to visit colleges when he was in high school. And we stayed in Hilton one night, which was a big deal for us. We didn't stay in Hilton, but we stayed in Hilton. And in the drawer was the book, Conrad Hilton's Be My Guest. And my sister and I took the book and we read it out loud, and we were so into it. We always felt like we sort of knew what Hilton was. And we just read the book. We didn't know Hilton, but that connection was so much deeper because we knew the story. And so here we have not just a product, but a whole approach to business. And to the extent we can get people to share that story, to buy into the story, and then tell others, that can be very powerful, much more powerful than advertising or some other way to connect with people.
So it's a kind of a form of guerrilla marketing, if you will.
Yeah, I guess it is. There's an interesting tension we had actually with Coca-Cola when we said we want to write the book, because when you're a current employee of Coca-Cola, you don't write books. That's sort of a policy. I said, well, I'm writing the book. I'm going to share the story. It's going to help. It's going to do good things for the brand. Admittedly, some of the book is not all pro Coca-Cola, because in a lot of ways we were created in response to Coca-Cola. So there were some interesting conversations there. But I think they've seen that it's a positive story. And even what's funny is, even though our presence sometimes puts Coke in an uncomfortable position, and sometimes it puts us in an uncomfortable position, they know that it's a healthy thing for them to be seen as diversifying and not monolithic in their thinking.
Sure, their shareholders love it too.
Well, we're growing, so that's a good thing.
So, what do you think your particular personality traits were that made you go? I mean, to walk into Whole Foods
Yeah.
and sell 15,000.
Yeah.
You're very charming, but
Yeah.
what were the traits that made it all work?
Certainly one of them was optimism. I mean, I was in there, I really believed we'd be able to make the product. I wasn't just BSing, but we never made it. And then the optimism that not only could we make it, but that it would sell. The optimism that we would have the money to be able to make the product and to continue to stay in business. And so I've definitely been accused of being a relentless optimist, to the point of probably, sometimes creating dangerous positions. The classic one from the book is, literally this happened. I was in Boston. We had made a delivery to Legal Seafoods, which was like, wow, this is incredible. We got Legal Seafoods. We're going everywhere. And we went into Harvard Square. We had driven up a truck from DC, a U-Haul truck. And we were pulling into a garage, and my friend was with me, a friend from college, said, yeah, I don't think we should park in this garage. I said, why not? He said, well, it says that there's 8-foot clearance, in the garage, and we're in a 10-foot truck. And I said, well, I think we can make it. Yeah. So sometimes 8 feet really is 8 feet. And I was willing to try. So like I say, sometimes that put me in difficult positions, but optimism clearly, and then a passion for what I believe in. And as you can probably tell, I believe in this. I believe in this approach. And the buyer, could see that, that I wasn't just sort of, flirting with this. I was all in.
Right. Well, okay, so where do the quotes come from?
Oh, we really get them from all kinds of, now that we've been doing it so much, people send them to us, but we're always out there looking, and it's, sometimes I'm just reading something and I'll underline it. Other times, some of these are cumulative. One of my favorites I literally heard when I was one Saturday morning, I was watching Fat Albert, the cartoon show, And Bill Cosby said, "He who throws mud only loses ground." Wow. Amazing. I love that. I'm like, that's going on. I didn't know at the time it was going on the bottle cap, but I kept that quote, and that's certainly emblematic of the way we think.
Well, let's open it up to some questions from the audience. While they're thinking and raising their hands, I have to ask you, does your house still smell like tea?
The house, well, we did have tea stain counters for a long time. We just got those replaced. Doesn't smell like tea, but we had a car, a Saturn station wagon. That was where both my delivery vehicle and my driving. So our first bottling plant was up in Buffalo, and we used to make a product called chai, Kashmiri chai, and for our first production run, I drove to Buffalo to Baltimore first to pick up freshly ground spices, chai spices, cardamom pods, and then I drove straight up to Baltimore, 8 hours in the car, and it was freezing cold, so that I had to have the windows closed. And when I sort of got to the parking lot and opened the door, my friend who was like at least a quarter mile away could smell the spices from the car, and that car never needed another air freshener.
Some questions? Any questions?
Hi. Sorry. I'm curious about your thoughts about kind of consuming our way into sustainability. You talked about it a little bit,
Yeah.
but just curious to hear a little bit more about
No,
that.
it's a very fair question because ultimately it's a contradiction, right? You can't do that. On the other hand, we are in a consumer economy, so someone said, well, you shouldn't work with any of the fast food restaurants because, they're selling food that's not healthy. I said, but you know what? They're not going away. So if we refuse to work for them, they're just going to keep selling unhealthy food. If we can get in there and sell healthy food, that's a start. And if we can sell healthy food and it works, then it really could help move them. So I think that's that balance of, yes, we are actors in this consumer economy. And no question, the best impact we could have from an environmental perspective is to do nothing. But I guess for me, that's not a viable option. So then, looking at everything we do at each point of impact, what can we do to make it better? So whether on the ingredient side, going to organic and then going to fair trade, on the packaging side, going to lighter weight packaging, and then going to renewable materials, that's certainly a bet, and then obviously recyclable and then renewable. Keep moving, I think is the best we can do.
Do you have plans for that packaging?
Yeah, so Coca-Cola actually has a plant bottle that is made of, the material is the same material used to make sugarcane, but not the sugar, it's the other parts of it, and it's a renewable bottle. So we're excited about that. Probably by the end of 2014, we should be able to get into it.
One of our entrepreneurship students.
Hi. Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. So I wanted to ask a little bit about the decision making that went into Coke buying you, kind of in a broader sense.
Yeah.
If you're fortunate enough to be a small company and there's expressed interest from a big dog like Coke or someone else, sort of the questions that you asked yourself and hesitations and what kind of went into the decision making.
Yeah. So I think the first thing to say is that we knew we were at a place where we needed a partner. So we were going to sell to somebody. And actually, in the book we tell the story. We were actually had a term sheet from Nestle, Nestle Waters in particular, and we got close, but we weren't all the way there. And it was more about we just weren't ready. We weren't ready to sell the company outright. We really did want an investor. So we knew. Look, when the first day we took in money from someone who wasn't from our family. We basically said we committed ourselves to at some point having an exit for our investors. That was a reality. And so then the goal was to make sure we could give the investors an exit that made it a worthwhile investment, and then that we could ideally keep the brand, making sure it had a legacy beyond just after the sale. And so, one of the reasons I feel we made the right decision is because to me, the proof that we made the right decision is the fact that I'm still running it. 6 years from when Coke invested, I'm still running it, I'm still passionate about it, and it's grown. And that still doesn't mean 5 years from now I might be doing something else and seeing this brand either not on the shelves or being corrupted in some horrible way. but every day that I stay and keep building it, that there's smaller chance of that happening.
I think it's amazing you're still running it. I mean, I think it's wonderful, but amazing.
Well, just to go on that, I mean, people did ask me, okay, you've sold the brand, now what are you going to go do? And for 10 years, we worked so hard and so passionately to get to the place where we could scale it. Like, why would I turn it over to someone else now? This is kind of the fun part. Just this week, I'm having a conversation with one of the 5 largest restaurant chains in the country. And I'm sort of there with these pinch me moments, like, oh my, what I would have done to get in front of a restaurant chain like that? And here we are.
Very cool. Very cool. Yes.
And to speak real loud and enough. My question will be as simple as, what is your favorite tea, favorite flavor?
Yeah, great. So I really like the Tulsi. It's just a wonderful herbal drink. It's very invigorating and yet also very calming. And of course, for me, every time I drink it, I think about the story of this community sort of being able to move from into economic self-sufficiency. So it's really, for me, that plays a big role. That said, it's very hard to have favorites among your children. So I really, we have a cooler in the office which has all of our varieties, and I some months will just sort of go all the way down and drink every one.
And there you say,
Yes, yeah, there are, and I have to say we tried stevia in tea and and in lemonade, and it has not worked. So our lemonade, we're discontinuing our 0-calorie lemonade. We have and actually the passion fruit green tea that's here we're discontinuing as well. So you may want to save those collector's items back there. You have to keep trying, and we kept trying, and some innovations have really worked, and others we just haven't got it right quite yet. So.
Yeah.
Okay.
He's been very patient.
Seth, at the beginning, you used to see your tea in glass bottles.
Right.
Why did you, first question, why did you switch to plastic, given that you are very concerned about the environment?
Right.
And then when you were bought by or approached by Coca-Cola, did you put as a condition that you're going to be keeping the values of the company?
Okay. So the glass bottle we still make our glass bottle. We still sell that in the natural foods channel. We believe, as you probably can tell, I'm agnostic. I believe both in the glass and in the plastic package, and I'll just, without getting into too much detail, share with you the thinking. You always hear the words reduce, reuse, recycle. So the first command, imperative, is to reduce. By that it means reduce the weight of your package, to make it as light as you can. And so what's interesting is that this product is 1/7 the weight of the glass bottle when empty. And what that means is we can ship 18% more product when it's a plastic bottle than the glass product. And that's certainly an advantage the plastic has. The other thing we saw is that there's places glass can't go, often food service, convenience stores, not convenience stores, but other sort of like, food service or health clubs, places like that where the plastic bottle we felt should go. The other thing we looked at is packaging efficiency, meaning the ratio of product to package. And once again, here glass doesn't do as well. Glass is 30% of the glass package is the weight of the package. In this case, 10% for plastic. And in our drink pouches, 97% of the liquid is the liquid, and 3% is the package. So it's a very efficient package. So I would say we're agnostic, and for us it was just more about a route to market. The other question about, how could we guarantee? No, there was no guarantee. The only way to do it, in my point of view, is it's the best defense is a good offense. So what I've done is built this brand with these equities intact. In fact, we weren't all fair trade until after Coke bought the company, and not until later in 2011. So for me, what we have to do is build the brand as powerfully as we can, and that's the best guarantee. It's not a guarantee, but it's the best protection to make sure if we build it this way, then it doesn't make sense to strip that away.
Yes, sir.
You didn't talk about this scale, but you raise money mostly from angels, is that right, as opposed to VC?
Yes.
Family friends, yes.
Yeah, so we raised $10 million over 10 years, which is also about how much money we lost, so that was what we needed to raise the money for, all from angels. And it was so important because it meant we were able to keep control. And over time, we had several very close encounters with private equity investors one of whom, most chillingly sort of kept asking for, we had a term sheet, we actually had signed off on it, and they kept saying they wanted management options. And I'm like, what does that mean? They said, well, we may want to attract some good talent in the future. And I'm like, well, we've got a good team here. And I learned later what they really wanted to do was replace me. That was sort of what this went for, so I'm glad we didn't take that money. And I have a friend who's been in his restaurant chain. He's been in business for 17 years, and just this month, he was forced out by private equity investors. So, from our perspective, Angels was the best way to go, and we're still thankful to them, and we gave them a good return.
So, but I would imagine that with Angels, them putting their own money,
yes,
as opposed to VCs putting somebody else's money,
right,
managing it. How was the dynamic? What do you think?
We were good about communicating with them. It was their own money, and we certainly made it clear, look, you could lose it all. Don't put, you've got to be accredited. You have to have a certain level of wealth to do this. But every quarter, I sent out a report about what was happening. Every year, we held an annual shareholder meeting. We always offered them the opportunity, if you want to sell, we can arrange for someone to buy your stock. And then every time we raised money, we gave them the chance to put more in so that they could not be diluted. And so they were very positive. And actually, as a sort of postscript to that, when I invested in this organic baby food company, I brought along a lot of the Honest Tea investors, and they did very well again. So we've had a very supportive investment base.
But $10 million over 10 years is really not a ton of money. You must operate very leanly.
It was a lot to us. I mean, yeah. We spent it like it was our own money. So we operated it with a lean mindset, but it was painful to lose that much money. That was you always want to. Our goal was to not lose any money. So when we lost that much money, that was challenging. But ultimately, of course, the marketplace didn't punish us for losing the money. They rewarded us for growing.
Well, let me close with one. Oh, Bina, go ahead. One of our entrepreneurial
I was
students.
curious about to find a perfect partner to start a new business.
Yeah.
I mean, your partner was your professor.
Yeah.
How did it come about?
Well, I hope there's a good lesson here. I'm sure all the professors can agree that you need to be paying attention in class. But for me, actually, my partner was perfect, and he was so different than I am. And he still is very different than I am. He's a real quirky, creative, analytical person, and I'm much more of a people person, big picture person. And so we were perfect complements. And we got along well. We had a healthy respect for each other. But we also saw the world pretty differently. And the key was that before we launched, the weekend before I was going to give my resignation over at Calvert, I took the train up to New Haven. I sat across from Barry's kitchen table with him, and we talked it all out. I mean, now, of course, we couldn't foresee everything, but what are the goals for you in doing this? What are your big picture goals? What do you see for yourself in life? What does success look like? And as a result of sharing that mindset, we had disagreements, of course, around label language. Oh, that's too snarky, or that's not a nice thing to say, and all of which were settled by my wife, who was sort of the decider. But we never had fundamental disagreements. We never said, this is the right direction, that's the wrong direction. And I can't tell you how many companies I see break up because they sort of get to a point, someone says, oh, well, now I'm going to go have kids, and someone else, well, wait a minute, we're just getting started. One of the classics, one of our board members, who was the CEO of Fresh Fields, Mark Ordan, had built Fresh Fields. He was just gaining momentum, and they were deciding, should Fresh Fields go public? Fresh Fields go public, or should they sell to Whole Foods? And Mark's board and some of his other partners said, well, we're going to sell to Whole Foods, and then you can go do what you want to do. And Mark's told me later, he said, but I was doing what I wanted to do. And so having that alignment is just critical, and because at some point it's going to come out if you don't have it.
And is your partner still a partner?
So for me, one of the reasons to write the book was to re-collaborate with him. He after we sold, he's still a professor at Yale, so we didn't have as much natural occasion to talk, and this was a really fun way to reconnect. He has now launched he's the chairman of a company called Kombucha, which is a kombucha product with alcohol in it. As he says, get tickled, not pickled. That's he's a very, he's a quirky guy. I'll just share with you in closing. This was to me a funny lesson I got from Barry. And we actually, I applied in corporate responsibility, but I was with Barry during the book tour. He's a little more formal. He was wearing a very nice suit, but he had these brightly colored socks, like purples and yellows. And someone said, Barry, what's with the socks? And he said, I figure people are going to make fun of me one way or the other. I'd rather have their attention focused on my ankles.
That's great. That's great. Well, it's been great to have you. There are books in the back, and Seth will sign them if you like, and you are welcome to take tea with you. Thank you for coming.